Welcome back to Q News. Egypt and Jordan have reiterated their commitment to a two-state solution. High-level meetings focused on regional stability, particularly concerning Palestine, and the need for sustained ceasefire and humanitarian efforts in Gaza. These diplomatic moves coincide with renewed US-Israeli cooperation and a controversial US arms shipment to Israel. Thanks for being here with our special coverage on Q News, where we tackle the latest developments in the Middle East. Egypt and Jordan have condemned escalations in the West Bank and reaffirmed support for a two-state solution. That came as Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met with Jordan's Crown Prince Hussein, who conveyed King Abdullah II's greetings. Discussions focused on strengthening bilateral ties and regional stability, particularly in Palestine. President el-Sisi and Prince Hussein emphasized Egypt's role in securing the Gaza ceasefire, humanitarian aid, and reconstruction without displacement. The meeting also addressed unity and stability. Jordan's King Abdullah II has reaffirmed that a just and comprehensive peace based on the two-state solution is essential for regional security and stability. Those remarks were said to a U.S. congressional delegation, where Jordan's King Abdullah II reiterated his country's firm rejection of any attempts to annex land or displace Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. Jordan's king also urged sustained ceasefire efforts in Gaza and stronger international humanitarian responses. The Israeli occupation forces are continuing their assault on the city of Jenin and its refugee camp for the 27th consecutive day, resulting so far in the killing of at least 25 individuals, dozens of injuries, and widespread destruction of property and infrastructure. The ongoing Israeli escalation is part of a broader military offensive that began on January 21st in Jenin and its refugee camp, as well as surrounding towns. The Israeli army expanded its assault into Tulkarm on January 27th. The escalation follows a ceasefire and detainee exchange deal in Gaza on January 19th. 245 humanitarian aid trucks, including 19 carrying fuel, have entered the Al Auja and Karim Abu Salem en route to Gaza. According to Al Qahira News, our sister news channel, the aid convoy facilitated by Egypt includes food, tents, and other essential supplies to support displaced residents. Now, for more on this, we're joined from Amman by the Professor of Strategic Studies at Al Hussein bin Talal University, Hassan Al-Daja. Thank you very much for being here on Q News with us. Now, Egypt's President el-Sisi and Crown Prince Hussein of Jordan have both stressed the urgency of halting Palestinian displacement. How effective do you believe Egypt's proposed reconstruction plans will be in alleviating suffering and preventing further displacement?
Good afternoon to you all. I believe that all Jordan and Egypt are working hand in hand in a beautiful cooperation, diplomatically, humanitarian, political, and many fronts. And, and not only at the local level, but also at the international level. And I believe that the efforts that are being spent by President Sisi and by the authorities in Jordan are indeed one of the best way to diffuse the tension of the situation on the ground. And I believe that these are efforts that are really highly laudable. And I must say, and I believe that the talks that have been happening between Jordan and Egypt are really strengthening the Arab position and towards a unified front to push for to push for a solution that would be representing the entire Arab world in the face of what the Trump administration is calling for. And there is much diplomatic effort and political effort that is being spent in this respect, and this is further helping with the dispatching of humanitarian aid, and this is and I believe this is one very positive step that will prevent the forced displacement of the Palestinians. And it's obvious that there is a consensus, at least at this level.
And of course, Jordan and Egypt have been working together so closely over the past months. The Jordanian Crown Prince has reaffirmed his support for Egypt's Gaza reconstruction plans. How do you see Jordan's role complementing Egypt's efforts in stabilizing the region?
Jordan has always had a very positive stance with Egypt in the face of all the pressure, and the pressures are many. And, and I can see that the vision that had been sometimes very remote have become a real possibility. And the Egyptian plan is a very ambitious plan, and we certainly need further support from Arab states. What the call from Saudi Arabia by the heir there, the Mohammed bin Salman, is also an important. This will further unify the Arab front. This is an important driving force towards a possible resolution, and we hope that this will bring us to the pre-1967 borders. And I must say there is a very strong consensus between Egypt and President Sisi and His Highness the King of Jordan, and this is a beautiful example of solidarity, especially in the face of Palestinian cause that is really embittering the situation. And when you talk about the different visions that we have on the ground, from the Israeli side, from the American administration side, from the Arab world side, means that it is important to have as little fronts as possible and as much as consensus as possible. And this sort of cooperation is, again, not only something of a driving force, but it is really, and I can say that the call for the division of Palestine by the decision number 81, unfortunately, this is a solution that was recommended and sometimes denied even by the Israelis.
Yeah, well, how important is it that this relationship between Egypt and Jordan, and the fact that they have been so close together and so in lockstep with each other in every single announcement and every single stance? How important is that?
This is a time-long relationship. This is nothing new. The relationship has been extending across decades, and history. History is there to prove it, and I believe that, and there are many ways to prove it across years. But I must say that of course, there are also sometimes a bit of a closeness of the borders between the two sides, and I believe that this territorial continuity is important in making the solution that would be and to making the solution of a possible forced displacement of the Palestinians very unlikely. And Jordan has not been withdrawn from any of the international agreements, and on the contrary, it has been very much in support of Egypt's policies, internal and external. And I believe that this consensus, again, is one of the most important extension of the culturalism and political same line of thinking, and this is very important in imparting a political solution, because military solutions are never the final word. The final goes to diplomacy and to politics, and we're trying to de-escalate and diffuse the tension, and everyone naturally is seeking to apply the resolution of the United Nations, and this is very important in giving the Palestinian cause a strong push forward at on international platform, on international and I believe that this further needs further nurturing, so as to make sure that we are really able to give this sort of coalition, if I dare say, the maximum impetus in. And when there is a threat on the West Bank, it is understandable that Jordan should be even further worried, and that it would be seeking some sort of political voice that would a humanitarian voice that would give it all the support needed to eventually to make sure that the international community would really understand the depth of the problem and come to terms with a solution that would be acceptable, and that would be certainly beyond the painful solutions that were suggested. And there has been already much and I believe that given that there is an extremely high political commitment and a political will that is obviously expressed by the heads of state, means that this should have all the impetus needed.
And King Abdullah II has stressed the importance of the two-state solution, and that being the only way to guarantee regional stability. He said this to a U.S. congressional delegation. President Sisi has also reiterated comments on the two-state solution. Do you think this has any chance of getting through to the U.S. administration, especially as Jordan and Egypt are standing together? Does this have any chance of getting through to the American administration under Donald Trump?
let's break the problem. We have to understand. I mean, we're talking of individual Arab states and eventually an Arab coalition, and including also an Islamic coalition. And there is the meeting between Netanyahu and Mr. Mark Rubio of late is only a further proof of what I'm saying, because if the situation is to be diffused properly, we'll have to think to have a unified Arab vision, which is crucial in this respect, and to have its say on an in an international platform, and believe that the Palestinians are looking for this from us, and we are there to do it, with whether in the face of Netanyahu or in the face of Trump. And of course, I mean, as we know, the International Criminal Court is pursuing Mr. Netanyahu, and Mr. Trump is trying to come to terms with a possible solution whereby there will be some forced migration and displacement, which is a solution that is definitely refuted. It's a plan that is doomed to fail, and the only resolution I can see is effectively to have this unified Arab front, including the Palestinian Authority, and to come up with a solution that would be acceptable to every party.
Well, we thank you very much, Professor, for joining us here on Q News. Professor of Strategic Studies at Al Hussein bin Talal University, Hassan Al-Dajjah. Thank you very much for being here with us. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have held talks in occupied Jerusalem. In a press conference, Netanyahu has said Trump is the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House. Netanyahu said he discussed with Rubio the bold vision of Trump for Gaza's future, adding that he and Trump are working in full cooperation and coordination on the situation in Gaza. The visit marks Rubio's first visit to the region as the U.S. Secretary of State. Meanwhile, Israel has received a shipment of 1,800 heavy Mk-84 bombs from the United States after U.S. President Donald Trump lifted a block imposed on the munitions by the previous administration of President Joe Biden. The Mk-84 is an unguided 2,000-pound bomb that the Biden administration declined to clear for export to Israel out of concern over its likely effect in hitting densely populated areas in Gaza. The Biden administration sent thousands of 2,000-pound bombs to Israel after October 7th, but had put a hold on one shipment. The hold was lifted by Trump last month. Palestinians in Rafah have condemned the American weapons supplies sent to Israel. Rafah residents said the U.S. has always supported Israel against the Palestinian people. Israel received Mk-84 bombs from the U.S. after President Trump lifted an export block imposed by former President Biden, as we just told you. The 2,000-pound bomb can penetrate concrete and metal with a wide blast radius. Washington has pledged billions in aid to Israel since the war began. Now we're joined from Cairo from Al Ahram newspaper. Managing editor joins us now, Mohammed Al-Din. Thank you for being with us here back on Q News. What details do you think have been revealed about Trump's bold vision for Gaza's future, as discussed between Netanyahu and Rubio on this first visit of the Secretary of State? I just want to ask you the question again. What do you think was being discussed by Netanyahu and Rubio in this meeting? Are you there with us? Mohammed Azardine, are you there with us? I just want to ask you, what do you think was discussed in this meeting between Netanyahu and Marco Rubio?
In the long deal between the two parties. And I believe also the focus was on to avoid Hamas taking the upper hand on the territory. And also there was a fear of the big escalation of Iran directly or indirectly. And I believe that Mr. Trump is probably going to use a lot of diplomacy in this respect so as to avoid hurting feelings, if I dare say, but there must be some sort of agreement between Israel and the U.S. administration that we cannot disclose of naturally because of the very nature of such agreement. But definitely there is a strong need to reach a ceasefire and to eventually reach the point to have a two-state solution and to bring the ceasefire into effect. There is so much on this agenda, and let it also be known that the American Secretary of State will visit several Gulf countries, including Saudi Arabia, and I believe that this is an important extension of this visit. But the actual visit to Israel and the Israeli Prime Minister was certainly one way of giving the full and unconditional support of the U.S. To Israel, a point that is, of course, very controversial, but that remains at the core of any negotiation, especially that there is still a strong military presence, Israeli military presence on Lebanese territory, which is jeopardizing the situation on the ground. And if any, it is an indication of a certain policy, American policy in this, and that needs to be organized or at least coordinated with the Gulf state, and there has been already a visit from the the Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs to Washington that was important in giving, showing the stance of Egypt vis-a-vis this situation. So Egypt has been insisting on sending humanitarian aid to Palestinian territory and to Gaza.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Q News. The managing editor of Al Ahram, that's Mohammed Azardine. Thank you very much for being here. And that brings us to the end of our special coverage on the Middle East. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Q News EGY. And thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.